In the early 1990s, the internet was a vastly different place. It was a frontier built on text, accessed through dial-up modems, and inhabited by a small but passionate community of academics, technicians, and hobbyists. This digital world, primarily centered around platforms like YouTube, was founded on a core ideal of open information exchange and largely unregulated free speech, a stark contrast to the polished corporate web we know today. This environment was highly relevant to its users because it represented a new paradigm for human communication. For the first time, individuals from across the globe could gather in digital spaces to discuss any topic imaginable, free from the gatekeeping of traditional media. It was a decentralized, chaotic, and idealistic experiment in collective consciousness, where the strength of an idea was meant to be its only necessary currency for survival and propagation. This video will explore a pivotal, yet often overlooked, conflict that tested these foundational ideals to their absolute limit. We will examine how a powerful, secretive organization waged one of the first major information wars online. We will cover the specific events, the pioneering legal battles that ensued, and the lasting precedents that were set, which continue to influence our digital lives in ways most people do not realize. My analysis is constructed from publicly available court documents, extensive journalistic reports from the era by publications like Wired and the New York Times, and academic research on early digital culture. The goal is to present a factual, evidence-based account of these events without resorting to speculation, focusing solely on the documented actions and their consequences for the development of the internet as we know it today. This utopian vision of a completely free and open digital commons was on a direct collision course with a group that held its own information to be sacred, proprietary, and worth protecting at any cost. The clash that followed would not only define the Organization S relationship with the internet, but would also begin to draw the very legal and ethical boundaries of cyberspace. The organization at the center of this conflict was a Church of Scientology, founded by science fiction author L. Ron Hubbard. From its inception, it has been a highly structured and hierarchical institution built around a vast body of writings and lectures. These materials form a path of spiritual advancement known as the Bridge to Total Freedom, which members pay significant sums of money to ascend through a series of levels. At the upper echelons of this bridge are highly confidential scriptures, known as the operating theta neurot levels. These documents contain the core esoteric cosmology of Scientology and are considered by the church to be not just trade secrets, but sacred texts. They are revealed to members only after years of study and financial contribution, under the belief that premature exposure could be spiritually and psychologically harmful. From the church's perspective, the absolute secrecy of these materials is a matter of religious doctrine and profound importance. They view these texts as a form of advanced spiritual technology that requires precise application by a trained auditor. Public release is therefore seen not only as a violation of intellectual property, but as a dangerous and sacrilegious act that could impede an individual's spiritual progress and trivialize their most sacred beliefs. An analogy, from their viewpoint, might be a highly specialized pharmaceutical company guarding the formula for a powerful, potentially dangerous drug. They would argue that only trained doctors should administer it, as improper use by the public could lead to disastrous side effects. This illustrates the level of control they felt was necessary to maintain over their technology, believing they were protecting both its integrity and the public. For decades, this system of control, through secrecy, was remarkably effective in the physical world. However, the burgeoning decentralized architecture of the early internet, where information could be copied and distributed globally in an instant, presented a fundamental and existential threat to this carefully guarded fortress of knowledge, setting the stage for an inevitable and historic confrontation. The digital flashpoint for this conflict was a Usenet newsgroup called Alt Religion Scientology, commonly known as ARS. This forum became a vibrant hub for current members, curious onlookers, and, most importantly, a growing number of ex-members and critics. It was a place for unfiltered debate, sharing of experiences, and critical examination of the church's practices and doctrines, something previously impossible on a global scale. In the mid-1990s, the dynamic shifted dramatically when former Scientologists began to post excerpts of the confidential alt-level materials directly onto the newsgroup. Figures like Dennis Erlich, a former high-ranking member, shared portions of these sacred texts, arguing it was an act of whistleblowing to expose what he considered to be fraudulent and abusive practices. This was the first time these secrets were truly escaping the church's control. This act created two irreconcilable perspectives. For the critics on RS posting the documents was a matter of free speech and consumer protection, allowing potential members to see what they would be paying for. For the Church of Scientology, it was a profound violation, combination of copyright infringement, trade secret theft, and a desecration of their religious canon that demanded an immediate and overwhelming response to contain the breach. The content of these leaked documents, particularly the story of Xenu from Operating Thetan Level 3, was a key point of contention. This narrative, involving a galactic overlord and frozen alien souls, had been a closely guarded secret known only to the most advanced initiates. Its public exposure on the internet was seen by critics as proof of the religion's outlandish nature and by the church as a catastrophic leak of its core theology. The public dissemination of their most guarded secrets on this new, uncontrollable medium triggered a response from the Church of Scientology that was unlike anything the internet had ever seen before. They decided to take the fight to the digital world itself, employing novel and aggressive tactics to silence their critics and scrub their confidential data from this new frontier of information. The church's counterattack was swift and led by its legal entity, the Religious Technology Center, RTC. The RTC's primary strategy was to use copyright law not merely as a shield for intellectual property, but as an aggressive sword to deplatform and silence critics. They argued that any quotation of their texts, no matter how small, constituted infringement and initiated a wave of lawsuits against individuals across the globe. This legal strategy extended beyond just suing the posters. In a move that shocked the nascent internet community, the church worked with federal marshals to conduct physical raids on the homes of their online critics. Armed with court orders, they seized computers, hard drives, and any digital storage, effectively silencing dissent by removing the critic's ability to even get online, all under the pretext of preventing further copyright violations. Simultaneously, the church engaged in a technical assault. They pioneered the use of a program known as a cancel bot, a piece of software designed to automatically send out cancellation messages for posts made by their critics on YouTube. This effectively erased critical messages from servers around the world moments after they were posted, directly manipulating the flow of information on the newsgroup and silencing opposing voices through brute force code. This action was a profound violation of netiquette, the community-enforced rules and norms of the early internet. Usenet was built on a foundation of trust between server administrators, and using automated tools to mass delete the speech of others was seen as a direct assault on the very infrastructure of open discourse. It was a declaration of war not just on the critics, but on the principles of the net itself. This potent combination of aggressive litigation, physical intimidation, and technical sabotage ignited what participants and observers would soon call the Scientology war on the early internet. This forced a small, decentralized community of tech-savvy users to defend themselves, leading to an unprecedented escalation and forcing them to innovate their own methods of digital resistance. As the war escalated, the Church of Scientology deployed another tactic designed to render the religion Scientology newsgroup unusable. They began flooding the forum with immense volumes of spam. Thousands of pro-Scientology messages, irrelevant articles, and even gibberish were posted to drown out any legitimate discussion, a technique that would later be known as astroturfing, or a denial of service attack on conversation itself, making critical posts nearly impossible to find. However, the community of netizens on ARS refused to be silenced. Comprised of many programmers and technically adept individuals, they began to fight back with code. They engineered their own software filters, known as kill files, to automatically screen out the spam. More impressively, they developed tools to detect and automatically repost messages that had been deleted by the church's cancel, creating a resilient, self-healing conversation space. This conflict quickly evolved into a fascinating digital arms race. For every new technical measure the church deployed to control the forum, the ARS community would collaboratively engineer a countermeasure. This constant back and forth showcased the unique strengths of a decentralized network against a centralized, hierarchical power. It was a real-time experiment in digital resilience, driven by a shared commitment to preserving a space for free expression online. This struggle highlights a fundamental tension between centralized control and decentralized networks that remains incredibly relevant today. If you find these dynamics of early internet history and the ongoing fight for information freedom fascinating, consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the events that shaped our digital world. Your support helps us continue to explore these important stories while this fierce techno battle raged across Usenet servers. A quieter but far more consequential conflict was being waged in the courtrooms. This legal struggle would move beyond the specifics of a single news group and begin to establish the foundational legal principles that would govern the rights and responsibilities of every user and company on the new digital frontier. The most significant legal case to emerge from this war was Religious Technology Center v. Online Communication Services, Inc. In this landmark lawsuit, the Church of Scientology sued not only the critic Dennis Ehrlich, but also his internet service provider, Nick. They argued that by providing the platform for the infringing posts to exist and propagate, the ISP was contributorily liable for the copyright infringement itself. This raised a terrifying question for the future of the internet. Could a service provider be held legally responsible for the content posted by its users? At the time, there was no legal precedent. An affirmative answer would have fundamentally broken the internet's growth model, forcing every ISP university and online service to proactively police all user activity or face crippling lawsuits, an impossible and economically prohibitive task. The potential consequences were enormous. If the court had sided entirely with Scientology, the internet as a medium for open communication might have been strangled in its infancy. Providers would have likely adopted extremely restrictive policies, banning anonymous speech and preemptively deleting any content that carried the slightest legal risk. The open, dynamic forum we take for granted today might never have been allowed to develop under such a regime. Ultimately, the court's ruling in 1995 established a critical middle ground. It determined that an ISP was not directly liable for its users' infringement, simply because its automated systems carried the data. However, if the ISP was notified of specific infringing material and failed to take action, it could then be held contributorily liable. This principle became a cornerstone of the 1998 Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DM. Though the Church of Scientology managed to win some specific battles on copyright grounds, their overall strategy of relentless legal and technical assault was about to produce an entirely unforeseen consequence. The intense pressure they applied to suppress this information was, paradoxically, about to make it more famous than they could have ever imagined, creating a powerful backlash. Every lawsuit the church filed and every raid it conducted became a compelling news story. The aggressive tactics, aimed at a small group of online critics, drew the attention of mainstream media outlets. Major publications like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Wired began to report on the Scientology war on the early internet, framing it as a David versus Goliath battle for the soul of cyberspace. This media attention had a deeply ironic effect. The very odd documents that the church was fighting to keep secret were now being quoted and described in detail within court filings, legal briefs, and newspaper articles. As a result, the information escaped the confines of a niche Usenet group and was broadcast to an audience of millions, achieving a level of exposure that the original posters could never have accomplished on their own. This phenomenon, where a concerted effort to censor or remove information leads to its much wider dissemination, is a classic case of what would later be termed the Streisand effect. The battle against alt, religion, Scientology is now considered one of the earliest and most definitive examples of this principle in action on the internet. Their campaign of suppression became the most effective engine for the information's distribution. Ultimately, the church's crusade to control its online narrative backfired spectacularly on a public relations level. In their attempt to silence a few critics, they ended up cultivating an image as a wealthy, and secretive organization that was hostile to free speech. This perception caused significant damage to their public image, a reputation that, for many, persists to this day as a direct result of these actions. The act of fighting on alt, religion, Scientology eventually subsided as the internet evolved. However, the foundational principles that were tested and the legal precedents that were forged during this conflict did not disappear. Instead, they became embedded in the very DNA of the modern web. with their echoes still resonating in today's most pressing debates about online speech and platform control. The first practical step to understanding this history's importance is recognizing its legacy in today's digital landscape. When we discuss issues like content moderation, the legal liability of platforms like Facebook and YouTube under Section 2, and the ongoing struggle between copyright holders and free expression, we are addressing the very same tensions that first erupted on that primitive Usenet newsgroup decades ago. For those interested in exploring this topic further, many of the original court documents from RTCV.com are publicly accessible through legal archives online. Additionally, journalistic archives from the 1990s and academic papers on early internet culture provide a wealth of primary source material that offers a direct window into how these events were perceived as they unfolded, offering valuable and unfiltered context. It is important to maintain a realistic perspective. Understanding this history will not magically solve the complex information-related challenges we face today, like disinformation or online harassment. However, it provides essential context, demonstrating that the battle for control of information is not new. It shows how legal and social norms around technology are often forged in the crucible of intense high-stakes conflict. What are your thoughts on the delicate balance between protecting intellectual property and ensuring the free flow of information online? This conflict was one of the first major battlegrounds for that very debate. Please share your perspective in the comments below, as this conversation is more relevant now than ever. Let's discuss where the line should be drawn in the modern era. Ultimately, the story of Scientology's war on the early internet serves as a powerful and enduring case study. It demonstrates that information within a decentralized network possesses a natural resilience that is difficult to extinguish. More importantly, it shows that aggressive, overt attempts to suppress that information can often become the most powerful catalyst for its widespread and permanent survival. Imagine an internet without a search bar, a vast, uncharted digital space where information existed, but finding it was an expedition. This was the reality of the web in the mid-1990s, a chaotic and mysterious landscape before Google existed to map it for us. It was a world built on directories, word of mouth, and pure digital exploration, a fundamentally different experience than the one we know today. Understanding this era is more than just a history lesson. It reveals the foundational DNA of our modern digital world and highlights how much has changed. The principles of online community, the challenges of information overload, and the very concept of a link were forged in this period. It gives us context for the centralized, algorithm-driven internet we now navigate, reminding us that this was not the only possible path. In this video, we will journey back to that time. We will explore the primary tools people used to find anything online, from the human curated lists of Yahoo to the sprawling discussions on YouTube. We all examine the feeling of browsing this untamed web and the skills required to uncover its hidden corners. This is not about secrets, but about understanding a lost art of digital navigation. Our channel is dedicated to chronicling these pivotal moments in digital culture, drawing from archived materials, historical accounts, and early web documents. We believe that to understand where the internet is going, we must first have a clear and honest picture of where it came from. This exploration is based on verifiable history, not just nostalgia, offering a clear view into a formative period of our connected world. To truly grasp what it felt like, you have to appreciate the environment. Before you could even see a web page, you had to get online, and that process itself was a barrier. It involved a unique and now famous sound that, for millions, became the official anthem of entering this new frontier. It was the sound of a gateway opening slowly and loudly into another world. The journey began with the piercing, static-filled shriek of a dial-up modem. This was the sound of your computer negotiating a connection over a standard telephone line, a process that could take minutes. For that duration, your family's phone was completely unusable. Many internet service providers like AOL or CompuServe charged by the hour, making every minute you spent online a calculated investment of time and money. Once connected, your primary tool wasn't a search engine, but a web directory. Think of the critical difference. A modern search engine uses automated bots to crawl and index billions of pages. A directory, like the original Yahoo, was a list of websites curated by human editors. It was less like a global index and more like the meticulously organized card catalog in a massive, ever-expanding public library. This created competing philosophies on how the web should be organized. Some believed human curation was the only way to ensure quality and relevance, creating a structured, topic-based hierarchy. Others were already building early algorithmic crawlers, like Lycos and Web. These tools were powerful, but their tendency to just count keywords often returned a flood of completely useless results, burying gems in an avalanche of digital noise. Imagine you were an explorer on an uncharted continent, equipped with only a compass and a partially hand-drawn map. That was what navigating the early web felt like. A directory was your port city, a known starting point. From there, you followed hyperlinks, like trails into the wilderness, hoping a path named Exotic Birds would actually lead the information on macaws and not a dead end. With this fragmented map, most users began their digital journeys from one of a few major hubs. These were not simple search bars, but sprawling portals, meticulously organized homepages that acted as the primary gateways to the rest of the web. They were the grand central stations of the digital world, and from them every adventure into the vast untamed network truly began. Your main navigational tool was the act of browsing, not searching. On a site like Yahoo, you would begin at its homepage a grand index of human knowledge. You'd click through a series of nested categories, drilling down from a broad topic to a specific one. For example, science, then astronomy, then solar system, then Mars, to finally find a list of human-approved websites about the red planet. Let's say you wanted to find a recipe for lasagna. You wouldn't type lasagna recipe into a search box. Instead, you would likely navigate to a directory S, lifestyle, or food and drink section. Then click on cuisine, then Italian, and finally pasta dishes to browse a curated list of links. Early search engines like AltaVista might find pages with the word lasagna, but they could be personal blogs or irrelevant news articles. Of course, directories weren't the only way. Many people relied on web rings, a clever system that connected sites with similar themes. Each member site had a banner that linked to the next or previous site in the ring, creating a circular tour of hobbyist pages dedicated to a specific topic. You could also find new sites through link lists on personal pages or by having friends email you a cool new URL. The fundamental limitation of this approach was its inability to scale. The web was growing exponentially, and a team of human editors could never keep up. Directories were often outdated, with broken links and vast omissions. Algorithmic search, while promising, lacked the sophistication to understand context or quality, making the discovery of niche specific information a matter of extreme patience, skill, and sometimes pure luck. This often frustrating but rewarding process of discovery created a unique online culture. The internet wasn't seen as a utility for instant answers. It was a place for community and shared expertise, where knowledge was exchanged in specialized forums and discussion groups long before the advent of what we now call social media. It was a culture built around conversation, not just consumption of content. This culture thrived in places like Usenet, a global discussion system that existed even before the web. It was organized into thousands of text-based news groups, each dedicated to a specific topic, from physics for serious academic debate to alt, TV, X-Files for fan theories. This was the original social media. Here, information was found by asking questions and engaging in long-form, threaded conversations with experts and enthusiasts. If you were a student trying to understand a complex mathematical theorem, you wouldn't search for a video tutorial. You would find the relevant math news group, subscribe to it using a special newsreader application, and post your question. Within hours or days, professors, hobbyists, and other students from around the world might reply, offering detailed explanations, proofs, and further reading. It was a profoundly collaborative model. Beyond Usenet real-time conversations happened on IRC or Internet Relay Chat. This was a network of text-based chat rooms where communities formed around shared interests, from programming languages to science fiction. Meanwhile, MUDs, or multi-user dungeons, offered the first persistent online worlds complex. Text-based role-playing games where thousands of players collaborated and competed, creating the blueprint for today's massive online games. However, these rich cultural hubs had significant barriers to entry. They required specialized software and a deep understanding of community-specific etiquette or netiquette. Newcomers who failed to lurk and learn the rules were often ignored or openly flamed. These were insular, self-governing digital tribes. a stark contrast to the frictionless, algorithmically mediated social platforms that would come to dominate the next decade of the internet. The shift away from this fragmented, community-gated internet was not a gradual event. It was sparked by a single, revolutionary idea about how to find information. This new concept didn't rely on human curators or simple keyword counting. It found a way to measure a web page's reputation automatically, an innovation that would ultimately re-centralize the entire web and crown a new king of discovery. That revolution was Google, built upon an algorithm called PageRank. Its core idea was deceptively simple, yet powerful. Instead of just analyzing the words on a page, it treated a link from page A to page B as a vote of confidence from A to B. It then weighed these votes, giving more influence to links from important authoritative pages. For the first time, relevance was determined by reputation. For those curious to experience a taste of this past, several digital preservation projects exist. The Internet Archive's Wayback Machine holds snapshots of billions of old websites, allowing you to browse them as they once were. Additionally, simulators like Old Today can render these archived pages in reconstructed versions of browsers like Netscape Navigator, offering a truly immersive glimpse into the digital past. The immediate result of Google's approach was a search engine that simply worked better than anything before it. The most useful and respected pages on any given topic often rose to the top. This incredible convenience, however, came with a profound consequence. It funneled the world's web traffic through a single, clean homepage, effectively ending the era of decentralized discovery and making directories and web-brings obsolete. What are your most vivid memories of the pre-Google Internetchi? The sounds, the websites, the feeling of discovery? Share your stories in the comments below. Reading through them is like opening a digital time capsule, helping us all piece together this incredible history of a web that once was. Your personal accounts add invaluable color to the historical record, so please share your perspective. Ultimately, the pre-Google web serves as a crucial reminder that the internet structure is not fixed. It was once a place that prioritized exploration and community interaction over the immediate efficiency of finding an answer. Understanding this history isn't just about nostalgia. It provides a valuable lens through which we can imagine and build a more thoughtful, and perhaps more decentralized, digital future.